And so today, I really want to focus on this idea of blessing and healing the world. Because it's about, as we know in metaphysics, as we know in unity, it's about changing consciousness. It's about changing how we approach the world through our thoughts and our words and our actions. Lisa gave a great demonstration of that this morning when she was trying to remember the law of mind action. And the reason she was having trouble with that is because right before she got up on stage, I asked her, hey, is everything okay? And then she's like, no, fine. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a little nervous. Sometimes I get nervous before she gets up and speaks in front of hundreds of people every day. And so I planted that seed in her, and then that was just like what happened. So you can thank me for that. Yeah. I love that right before I get on, for a service, someone comes up and just lays something on me, It's like, oh, can you wait till after the service, at least? Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me that slack. But you see, that's where it begins. And that simple example is how we express our thoughts, our words, and our actions. That simple idea, it shows us how powerful our words and thoughts are. Now, when I was in college, I was finishing up one of my last management courses for my bachelor degree, and they were all case studies, and I had to do paper after paper after paper each week on the case study, and then I had to present my own case study and get critiqued by the class. And so, my practice was always, I don't have my watch on, wait until the last minute, preferably midnight the night before, and then write your paper. Anybody have that practice? Yeah, I don't recommend it. And I got A's in every paper, the one class. I got A's, I blew away my professor on my case study. I just blew it out of the park. One of my students, because we're critiqued, asked me a question, well, can't you find any, challenges here? And, just like really trying to dig in. And of course, I fired back, well, did you read the case study? And then the professor is like, yeah, did you read the case study? So I got off on that one. Whew, didn't have to answer that question. That's where we are. That's where we are in terms of our world. It's 12 at midnight the night before it's due. Now, I know that we've all had an experience of thinking about this and talking about this, because this isn't new, right? We've known this since the 80s or before. We've known that what we are doing to our planet is destructive. The atmospheric pollution around us is really choking us out, and the world is changing. Now, some people say the science shows that we go through this every few hundred years, and we can tell that by the ice core, but the ice cores show that every few hundred years, yes, there's an ice age, but then there's a rise in CO2, which melts everything, and we all get back together again. But now that rise in CO2 is well beyond anything that we've ever experienced before in the last 800,000 years, according to those ice cores. So it's different. We're not in the same place as we were before. That there's something that needs to happen. We're at that pivotal moment in time when we have to take action. Now, you can also look at the world and all of the violence that is happening in the world, all of the struggles that are happening, of course, in the Ukraine, and you can look at that and say and think, what a horrible thing that's happening. But that consciousness of violence and the atrocities that are happening there, that consciousness does not lie solely in that particular person. That consciousness is all around the world. And we see it whenever, people are fleeing and running from somebody. We see it in the indigenous peoples around our country who have been treated atrociously throughout the years. We see it in the minorities and people that have been minimalized simply because they exist and they seek freedom and equality. We are at a pivotal point right now as you see all of this start to bubble up in the world. It means that it's time for us to really raise our consciousness and get to a point where we can do things that make a difference in the world. Now, I know the idea of global warming, everyone has their what you should do's, right? We all have our shoulds, the blame, shame, and guilt. You know what you should do? Let's use this bag. We'll get maybe 100 reuses at the grocery store instead of this bag, which will get 30 reuses. That's great. But we're not going to recycle our way out of this challenge, because this is a challenge of consciousness. The human consciousness has created this, created the violence, created the pollution, created the situation, and so we have to heal and bless these consciousnesses. We have to raise our consciousness in order for us to do meaningful change. When you have that aha moment, you make a change in your life spiritually, right? When you have that spiritual aha moment, all of a sudden it's, oh, here's what I need to do differently in my world. But you don't do it differently until you really embody it. First, there's the intellectual knowing, right? Okay, we know we need to change spiritually, health-wise, relationship-wise. We know there's some place in us where we can change and grow. But until we embody that and then start living it, no change ever happens. So instead of looking at each one of you and saying, you better buy my, grocery bag, it's not about blame, shame, or guilt. It's just looking at where we can shift our consciousness. That's the hallmark of unity. That's the hallmark of New Thought and metaphysics. It's about shifting consciousness, raising consciousness to the awareness of that pure essence that's within you, to the awareness. We might call it the Christ consciousness, or that point within you that is pure, that spark of divinity, your higher self. And, just like Lisa said at the beginning around the word God, sometimes we hear these terms and we throw it out. It's like, okay, well, that's not what I call it. Prayer, I don't do prayer, I do meditation. Well, in unity, they're the same. They're incorporated. It's about raising consciousness so that we can make a difference in our lives. We can make a difference for each other. The time is now, because we only live in the present moment. Right? All of those future ideas, and this isn't about creating a world that everyone is happy and sparkly and lovely. It's about creating a world that we can live together in harmony, even with differences. That we can come together and make conscious change so that people of minorities are lifted up, so that our ecology is changed, so that our relationships are changed. There's no difference. You see, it's all the same. It's all the same in our consciousness, this idea that we have. And so that really, all you have to do is look at what your thoughts are throughout the day to understand where you're at with it. And I love, Catherine Ponder is one of my favorite unity ministers, unity authors. She's written many books, and one of them, Prospering Power of Love. And the idea here is, all of that unforgiveness, all of that resentment, all of that stuff that you have, all that shadow side of us, right? We all have it, but we're allowing it to run us. That shadow side says to us, this isn't my problem. I bought my electric car, and now it's someone else's problem. It's a matter of raising the whole consciousness. That's one thing that I've done, but what else can we do? What can we do as a spiritual community to become, net neutral or net positive in terms of the impact that we have in the environment? What can we do as a spiritual community to become, I would say, net neutral and net positive in terms of the consciousness that we're sending out to the world, that we're creating in the world? Because it's those thoughts that we carry around every day that is our consciousness. So I've got my prayer time, I've got my meditation time, and then I get on the road and I start swearing at people. Not me, that's just a hypothetical. Reverend John would never do that. My shadow twin Skippy might, but we all have that, that little insecurities or those little gotchas. But the more you recognize it, the more you recognize and see, oh, there's my shadow. Without blame, shame, or guilt, just saying, okay, how can I look at this a little bit differently? And without making it sarcastic. Oh, I bless you, I trip you and bless you on your way. That's what we used to do in YOU. right? Because still the underlying component of that is violence. The blame, shaming, and guilting that we do in our society is prevalent. Even from a phrase like, it's what Jesus would do. You should do it too, because it's what Jesus would do, or what Buddha would do. Well, it doesn't make any difference. It's really my interpretation of one of those master teachers would do, right? And I'm shaming you, and I'm turning Jesus into a weapon. I'm weaponizing Jesus by shaming you into believing this is what you should do. That's the religion of the medieval times that we've been living in. In unity, we are moving beyond that pastor flock mentality. Because last time I looked, you're not sheep. You're not here to be corralled into a little pen and be sheared every once in a while. I got one sheep in the back there. You are powerful spiritual beings. That's what unity is here for, is to teach people how to be more powerful spiritual beings through consciousness. How to raise and change the reality of the world through consciousness. Now, this isn't, again, it's not pie in the sky and we're not going to go pray and all of a sudden everything's going to be happy. The practice is to simply move into that state of being, of awareness of your oneness with Spirit. That's it. The more we can do that, the more that higher consciousness will guide us in the things that we do. The more that higher consciousness will say, maybe I should put down the cheesecake and eat something more healthy. And then it's up to me to do it. But when the ego consciousness, when the human consciousness, the shadow consciousness, when the pain body consciousness, as Eckhart Tolle would say, is leading the way, then we are creating a world of anger and fear and resentment. That's the energy that we put out there. So as powerful spiritual beings, and the law of mind action says that is what we are creating in our life. That's how I experience my life. That's what I'm putting out into my life. So that's what I'm creating in the world around me. And, all you have to do is look at your life to see that it's true. To see, okay, here I am. And look what I just created. I was so stressed out this morning because we're revamping the sound for the service. And there was, everything all of a sudden wasn't working. Ronnie couldn't hear Deborah. Deborah couldn't hear Russell. I couldn't hear any of them because I was in the... So until all of a sudden, we pushed a button and everything started working again. But that stress, you know when someone's stressed and they come into the room, right? Right? You know when someone's stressed and someone's angry. Kids know it very well. It's like, oh, mom and dad are in this mode. I'm going to go into whatever mode, keeps me alive. That's what they do. So our opportunity is to really come into this idea of making a conscious effort to bless and heal our world. Just simply having that idea of blessing and healing our world. Having that consciousness of a healthy and whole world and living from that consciousness is enough to make a difference. Because it will empower you and it will inform you as you move forward in the things that ought to be done by you. Whatever you think those are. Right? Whatever those shoulds are for you. And the challenge is don't go blaming everyone else for not following your should. I had a colleague across the bay who was talking about this idea of equality and racial justice. And, she said, how do you do it? Because, some people get really angry at their colleagues for not saying the same words or believing or acting the same way or doing something exactly like, because we can't change the rest of society, so what do? We pick on the things that we can change or that we can pick on. And what they were doing was, one of her people they were getting frustrated and angry and lashing out, saying, you have to be different. Does that ever change anything? I look at my kids. If you are out there and trying to, beat them with an iron rod and tell them this is what you're going to do, you have to be different, how are they going to react? Versus, can you have a conversation with them and explain, hey, here's what I'm thinking, what are you thinking? I was taking something to Ethan before a baseball game, and he said, can you, well, I need my shirt by 2 o'clock. Great. Sometimes he comes home for lunch. So I got his shirt ready, and I got a sandwich and put it on the table. Sometimes I take it to him. He didn't specify, and I wasn't thinking. So it's like, hey, where are you at 2:10? Luckily, the bus was late, so I brought his shirt and his sandwich and his water bottle. And he just said, hey, I'm not trying to be, I forgot the word it was, but angry, but I just want to know, what is it where was the communication gap? What did I say that you didn't get? Wow. My 16-year-old. Now, granted, there's another half of him that is not that, but kids, prefrontal cortex, not fully formed. But he caught me. I'm just like, yeah, sorry, I didn't know whether you're coming home. Sometimes you come home. I was thinking about this, and I just wasn't thinking about it. Okay, cool, thanks. I'll be more specific next time. Thanks. Clear communication. That's wacko. You see, that's what we are here to do, and that's what we're here to do on a global basis. And we do that by raising our consciousness and putting focused attention on healing our world. We're putting focused attention on what we can do and how we can be in raising consciousness around the violence. So instead of focusing on the violence and being angry and upset and hurt, we're going to be angry, upset, and hurt. That's okay. But then you have to get beyond that to be productive. You have to get to a point where we are looking at it from a perspective of how can we raise consciousness? How can we bless the situation? How can we heal the situation? Now, Myrtle Fillmore, oh wow, I've gone long. Myrtle Fillmore has talked about it in 3 forms of healing, right? It begins at spirit, soul, and body. Healing begins first with our connection with spirit. Healing begins first by getting into that presence and power of the divine essence of life, love, and wisdom. And the soul is the sum total of your consciousness. So it's aligning your soul, your consciousness with that, and then that gets expressed in the body, in the world, in the manifest world. So we're going to be practicing this. I'm going to start, Lisa's going to tell you a little bit about it, but on Thursday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to have a world blessing and healing prayer circle. Now, prayer and unity is different. It's not, oh God, please make them stop. That's not unity prayer. That kind of beseeching prayer isn't what we do. What we do is we begin with meditation. We begin by centering ourselves, by quieting that shadow mind, that ego mind, that pain body mind, by becoming still so that we can be in the presence of that holy, in the presence of that energy that's already within that spirit that's within you, holy, without thought. Sometimes I get in there and say, oh, I'm there. Okay, I'm not anymore. Let me get back into it. And once we're in that, we affirm and we live in that experience of the divine. And from that energy comes affirmative prayer. What you affirm in that energy is your prayer and the most powerful expression that your mind can have. So we focus that attention and our intention on healing the planet, which means focusing it on allowing this consciousness that we are all a part of, right? There's no part in the universal consciousness that we're not. And the human consciousness that gets layered on top of that, we're all part of that. And so when we raise our ideas and thoughts to that level, then that raises the whole. And so every Thursday we're going to be doing that. And we're going to be focusing it very intentionally on healing the planet, healing our world, healing the atrocities. Now, it's none of our business how it outpictures, right? The problem that people have with prayer is like, well, I prayed for my whatever. I was going to use it, but I didn't want to seem so, egotistical here. My burnt orange McLaren. Thank you, Nancy. It was an example in one of my classes, and I have had several manifestations of burnt orange McLarens. One that's 2 inches long, one that's about 6 inches long. I got a little hat that the people have given me. What was I saying? Yeah, so I didn't get my burnt orange McLaren, my $300,000 car. Didn't show up. Or, whatever I was playing for my friends or family, it didn't show up the way I expected it to show up. It's not our business to know how it's going to show up. It's just to simply hold the consciousness for someone. When you're holding somebody in prayer for a health issue, you simply hold them in the consciousness of spiritual wholeness, health, abundance, mobility, ease, comfort, grace. You hold them in that consciousness, and the rest is not your business. But when something doesn't show up the way we want it to show up, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like someone said God, oh, I'm not listening to him. He doesn't know what he's talking. He's using that G word. Someone said Jesus. Someone said meditation or metaphysics or whatever the word is. We're talking the same language. We're talking the same intention, right? So put on your universal translators and just translate it into something that works for you so that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So every Thursday we're going to put this into practice, and I invite you to join me. I'll be here in the sanctuary. I'll be on Zoom, and whenever you can come in at 2 o'clock, we'll have about a half hour of meditation and affirmative prayer. Something tangible that we can do to help raise the consciousness, because you are powerful spiritual beings. And that's what unity is about. It's not about, gathering the sheep and putting them in a pen. It's about raising your level of consciousness so that you can go out into the world and be a beneficial presence. And as you're doing it, give thanks. Give thanks for the air that you breathe. Give thanks for the ideas that are coming to you to help you. I love this quote from Eckhart Tolle in A New Earth. This is at the end of the book, when he's talking about a new earth. Is the notion of a new earth just another utopian vision? No, not at all. That's not what we're talking about. All utopian visions have this in common: the mental projection of a future time when all will be well. We will all be saved. There will be peace and harmony at the end of all of our problems. There have been many such utopian visions. Some ended in disappointment, others in disaster. At the core of all utopian visions lies the main structural dysfunction of the old consciousness, looking to the future for salvation. The only existence the future actually has is as a thought form in your mind. So when you look to the future for salvation, you are unconsciously looking to your own mind for salvation. You are trapped in form that is all ego. It's a now thing. It's midnight. The paper's due tomorrow. It's time to get to work. It's time to get to work to raise consciousness, to raise each other up. And to, what was the daily word? Can you read that to me again real quick?
Gather.
To gather. It was perfect.
We gather and magnify the presence of God.
We gather and magnify the presence of God. We gather and magnify the presence of God. That's what we do. And we do it in our own beautiful way. But we do it together. And when we do it together, when we come together, that energy is multiplied, is exponential. There's hope. And it's based on faith. Your power to create in the world. Your power to shape substance. So let's have hope. And let's get to work.